thanks everyone for logging on. We the IC Palestine is kind of I think doing something like this for the first time. So my name is Sigil. I'm one of the co-chairs of IC Palestine's the IC's Palestine subcommittee. Um and We have a really special presentation today, something a bit different, I think. Um, I'm wearing a keffiyeh right now, and it said that like the lines here like represent like olive leaves, and so like the olives and olive trees are just a really strong symbol for Palestinian resistance, Palestinian existence, and I think it's like they represent indigenous connection to the land. They're drought resistance. They survive in harsh conditions, and they've been, harvested for thousands of years. They're a big part of Palestinian culture. And as a result, they've often been attacked by the Zionist settlers and Zionist state since the very beginning. I think I was reading that like between 67 and 2009, they uprooted 830,000 trees. It's probably surpassed 1 million by now. And right now in the West Bank, we're uh, we're basically seeing increased attacks from the settlers. Settlers are basically in the area, especially from illegal settlements, are coming and attacking Palestinians as they try to harvest this time of year. And this is a problem because this is a olive oil and other byproducts from olive trees are an essential like economic lifeline for the West Bank. Um, and not only is this illegal, but it's just indicative of like the violence and bigotry that's part of the larger occupation. So we are hosting this webinar with Faz3a, which is an organization which I'll let the panelists tell you a bit more about. Um, but First off, we're gonna have Kate, who's a veteran of the International Solidarity Movement during the Second Intifada. She's located out in Al-Quds. We're gonna let her do a bit of the introductory slides.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. So it's really good to be here and see so many people here. I'm really thrilled to introduce you to the Faz3a movement and hope that some of you are thinking about joining us on the ground. It's an incredibly emotional day for me because I just returned to Palestine for the first time in 20 years. I was deported 20 years ago and I just made it back. So to be here in Al-Quds this is a really special day for me, and I can't think of a better way to conclude it than doing this webinar with all of you. So before we go into what Faz3a is and what it's doing, I want to tell you just a little bit about the context in which we're working. Alicia, can you go to the next slide? So the West Bank, I'm sure many of you know, is occupied Palestinian territory. It's an area about the size of Delaware, which I know might not be meaningful to all of you because who goes to Delaware, but it's the second smallest US state. It's about 2,300 square miles, if that means anything to anybody, which it didn't to me, but it's a very small area. You can drive through it. You could drive through it in a couple of hours if there weren't so many checkpoints and blockades to get through. As you can see, it's divided into 3 areas. These are a product of the Oslo period, which is effectively dead in all but name. But so it's areas A, B, and C have different legal statuses. Area A is where the majority of the Palestinian people live, but encompasses only 18% of the land. And it's theoretically completely under the control of the Palestinian Authority, except that it isn't. The Israeli army invades and carries out raids and war crimes on a regular basis with no recourse from the Palestinian Authority. Those are the blue areas, the dark blue or medium blue areas on the map. The larger blue areas. The darker blue areas are Area B, and that is an area theoretically of joint Palestinian and Israeli control. So in those areas which are do not include very much of the land, about 21–22%. The Palestinian Authority theoretically needs to be consulted if the Israeli army is going to carry out a raid or a land confiscation. Again, this works more in theory than it does in practice. The vast majority of the land is what's called Area C. It's under complete Israeli military control. So it's basically a military zone. And Palestinians have almost no ability to build or to improve their property. They own the land, but they don't own the minerals under the land or the water rights to the land. Many Palestinians in the West Bank, and especially in Area C, lack adequate water. 95,000 people receive fewer than 50 liters of water per day, which is half the minimum amount recommended by the World Health Organization. A third of Palestinian communities in Area C lack a primary school, so the children have to travel or walk long distances to reach the nearest school, and often through checkpoints or roadblocks. There are separate roads for Israeli settlers and Palestinians. There are about 2.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and about 500,000 Jewish Israeli settlers. And as you heard earlier, that number is growing every day through land confiscations, which should be illegal, but are ruled legal by the Israeli courts, and basically through the impunity of Israeli settlers. And some of the areas that Faz3a is working on are really prime examples of those, where settlements encroached on Palestinian land in a way that was illegal under Israeli law, but over time, the Israeli government just said, okay, like, we'll give you permission to do this. We'll give you some water. We'll give you some protection. We'll start building some roads. And then before long, that illegal settlement is a quote legal. All the settlements are illegal under international law, but under Israeli law, they become quote legal. We could go to the next slide. Hello, can we go to the next slide? So it really is an apartheid system. There's two sets of license plates. As I said, there's two sets of roads. Palestinian cars cannot travel on. There are settler roads, which are good, fast paved roads, and often running over Palestinian dirt roads. Palestinian cars, which have a green license plate as opposed to the yellow Israeli license plate, are often not allowed on the settler roads unless they have a permit, which is very difficult to get. We can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So there's very little freedom of movement for Palestinians, while Israeli settlers can roam around with impunity, terrorizing communities. Palestinians encounter daily checkpoints, blockades, having to convince soldiers that they have the right to get to school, to get to work, to get to the hospital, to have a baby, to just carry out the business of daily life, and especially to work the land, to harvest olives. Many of the communities during this olive harvest season were given permission by the army, told they could harvest on certain days, and then when those days came, the army said, with out any explanation, no, you don't have permission to pick today, and they violently forced the people off of their land. You can go to the next slide, please. Destruction of homes and property is extremely common. Over the past years, over the past year, things have gotten exponentially worse as the focus has been on the extreme genocide occurring in Gaza. There's been a much quieter, at least in terms of the international press, campaign of ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, resulting in the ethnic cleansing of at least 18 villages that's been documented. So people were so terrorized by settler violence, and which is backed up by the army. You know, the army is in the West Bank specifically to protect the settlers. That's their overt function. And they use their power to enforce, basically to enforce what the settlers want. And so that combination of settler violence and army violence has forced at least 18 villages to abandon their land. Some of them have been able to return for some amounts of time, but basically they know that they have no guaranteed right to stay on their own land. We can go to the next slide, please. So that is the context in which Faz3a was organized. And Faz3a is not brand new. It's been around for some years, as Mahmoud will tell you. And basically, the word Faz3a means reinforcement or directly coming to people's aid. And it's sort of a form of mutual aid that's traditional in Palestinian society, so that people band together to support one another and make sure that everybody's needs are met. And Palestinian society, in my experience, is much more collectively oriented than what we're used to. So with the Faz3a campaigns of years past, groups of Palestinians, including Palestinian college students and people from neighboring villages, have come together to pick olives to make sure that the harvest could happen in areas that are heavily threatened by settler violence, and to make sure that it could happen quickly, because often if people are given a certain number of days to pick, it's never an adequate number of days. And so people have been organizing collectively to make sure that they're able to get the harvest done for a long time, for quite a number of years. But what's new this year, because of the significant escalation of violence, is that they decided to bring in an international presence. And this was building on the work of the International Solidarity Movement, which I have been part of for quite some years, and also groups like the International Women's Peace Service, which I was privileged to participate in for several years in the early 2000s, Christian peacemaker teams, which is now, I think, community protection teams, is another organization. The Center for Jewish Nonviolence brings internationals. So many groups are bringing internationals, but Faz3a, for the first time this year, decided to try bring internationals to join the Palestinians who were directly coming to one another's aid. Could we go to the next slide? So I think that the next thing was going to be a video of our work. This is just a short clip that shows some of the work that Faz3a has done in the last years. Is there sound? Well, I'm sorry that we weren't able to hear that, or at least I wasn't, so I assume you weren't either. But you get a sense of what a beautiful and strong time the olive harvest is in Palestinian communities. And I mean, I really have to say, I had the pleasure of being part of 3 different olive harvest campaigns during my time in Palestine. And it's just such a special time when families are spending a lot of time together, um, cooking wonderful meals in the fields and just really relishing in the trees and the history. Some of the trees are generations old, and it's really a connection to the past. And so it's really tragic when last year the harvest was basically not able to happen at all. I think 80% of the harvest was lost. This year has been better thanks to the organizing of Faz3a and ISM and all the other groups, but still, I think many communities just were too terrorized to even try to complete the harvest. So Faz3a aims to turn some of that around. It's a campaign that's organized by a nonpartisan coalition of Palestinian activists, including youth activists, students, and popular committees from all over the West Bank. It's building on a tradition of organizing and mobilizing, but also looking to find new and fresh ways to counter the significant rise in unchecked Israeli violence. Um, since October 7th, settler violence and army violence has been the direct cause of multiple fatalities. And within our Faz3a group, we've actually had quite a number of serious injuries, of which Daniel is gonna talk about that, having been one of the people who experienced that. So if we could go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Our mission is to build a strong international solidarity network with a strong capacity for action and effectiveness, to mobilize a mass presence of internationals on the ground, providing direct protection for Palestinians under Palestinian guidance, to build and reinforce the Palestinian capacity for Sumud, holding onto the land, for regaining ground which was lost to Israeli violence in the most literal sense. And if we could go to the next slide. Our goals as internationals in Palestine are to support Palestinian nonviolent resistance to the illegal military occupation, to intervene nonviolently insofar as we're able against settler violence and army violence, to witness and provide documentation of human rights violations, to provide an international presence in areas that are often ignored by the media and mainstream non-governmental organizations, and to try to bring media attention and the attention of international human rights groups to what we're witnessing. And what I think of as the most important thing is just showing solidarity, being visible as witnesses and as people who care, because so much energy goes into convincing the Palestinians that no one knows and no one cares about what they're experiencing. And so often, it's really just about showing up. It's like, really, there's often very little that we can do about the violence that's being committed, but just knowing that someone is there, seeing it, listening to people's stories, taking those stories back to our communities, that's what the work really is. And, I think just living in solidarity with the people for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, it means so much, and it deepens our own connection to the struggle and our own understanding of what the struggle is really about. And it intensifies, enhances our ability to talk to our own communities about it. We say that the work is, Faz3a and ISM say in training that the work is 40% in Palestine and 60% back home, but I say it's more like 80-20. I mean, really, what we do in Palestine is in the service of the work that we're all doing back home. That's, BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions, pressuring Congress for an arms embargo, and just raising awareness, countering the narratives in the mainstream media. That's the work that the Faz3a movement is really about enhancing. So I hope that, as you listen to Daniel and you listen to Mahmoud, some of you will start thinking about, is this something that I might feel able to participate in? So now I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, I think, unless, or maybe the organizers want to say something.
Yeah, I'll just basically added some comments. But thank you so much, Kate. That was awesome. Yeah, so it's funny that you said that it's the size of Delaware because I'm in Delaware. So, and yeah, nobody comes here. I just want to let everyone know that we do have a Q&A. So, please submit your questions and we can respond. We'll have Mahmoud and I believe Daniel responding to questions at the end. Daniel also goes by Amato in Palestine. I'm gonna pin you right now. And that for that reason, I didn't realize until just now that I know Daniel from our early campus activism days. So I'm so excited to see you. Daniel's a Faz3a volunteer who's going to speak about his experiences as he was actually shot by the Israeli occupation forces out in the West Bank. So please tell us more about yourself and your experiences out there.
So hey everyone, I'm Daniel Santiago. Back in the West Bank, I went by Amado Sison. I actually went through a few name changes, but Amado Sison is a name taken from a Filipino revolutionary. Amado Guerrero was the guerrilla name, and Joma Sison was his real name. So I guess just take it back. Everyone can hear me? Good. All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Um, so I'm a teacher in Jersey City, and since the escalation of October 7th, it was just really hard for me to teach, and I'm just teaching like nothing's happening, and it was just driving me insane. And by the end of the year, um, I was bringing snacks in for my students. It's just the last week after finals, and so I left my kafia on the gate. It was really hot, bringing the snacks in, and someone took it. But that actually kind of led me into going to Palestine because I had to buy a new kafia, and there's a postcard that came with it, and it said, "Thank you for your support. It means a lot. You don't know how much it means to us." And on the right side, it said invitation to visit. So then I asked around, and um, friends from the student movement actually reached back out to me and said that there was this organization called Faz3a. And from there, I did the orientation. It was my summer break, and I decided to go after the training. So there's the orientation and the training. And so once I got on the ground, they teach you how to, they train you about all the things that you're going to face, whether it's the border, the settlers, police, the army, right? So I got on the ground and got to the training a little bit later because I reset my phone and I couldn't get in contact. And then finished the training, and then we are stationed in Kusra. So that's south of Nablus. And the first day was me just getting some clothes together. I packed really light. I exchanged money, and we had a beautiful dinner at a Palestinian family's house. And we had makluba. It was wonderful. So hospitable, so warm, so kind. And from there, I was like, oh, wow. All right. This is how it's going to be every day. Just the beauty of Palestine and the Palestinian people, which I did experience the whole time. But the second day, so every Friday, there's a weekly demonstration in Beta where solidarity activists come, ISM, Faz3a, other groups, and the Palestinians there. So the aim is trying to get back to their land on the Ivitar settlement, which was stolen from them, right? So the people of Beta come, they try to march, and they try to go back to their land that was stolen from them. And it starts off with a Juma prayer. And for about 5-10 minutes, they're praying. And already, when we're going up this hill where they prayed, you could see that the IOF, or the Israeli army, were stationed on a roof. There was around, yeah, let me see. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, questions later. Okay, good. So you could see them on the roof through the trees. After the prayer is done, that's when the chanting started. And once the chanting started, that's when the tear gas was shot at us. There's maybe 5 to 8 tear gas canisters shot at us. Elders were leading the chants. And once we heard live rounds, we ran behind the concrete wall. There was maybe 20 of us at the time. A lot of people went down the hill to safety. And we were just making sure everyone was safe. We could see the dust coming off the concrete walls. Tear gas was still being shot at us, trying to lure us, away from our position. And it was a little chaotic. But everyone just made sure everyone was safe. And in Faz3a, we always have a buddy system to make sure no one's left behind and to ensure the volunteers and Palestinians are as safe as we can be within this situations we're in. So I followed another comrade of mine, documenting, and then all of a sudden the Palestinians were running, and we always take the Palestinian lead, so we ran. Behind us, over a concrete wall, and just running until we thought it was safe. At that point, we regrouped, and we were at the intersection where it was a road within the community and the road that we went up for the demonstration. We saw Palestinians running, so we just waited. We went behind houses and some olive trees, and from there, we just waited until it was safe, and then they told us to run. So we ran, and then maybe there was like 3 minutes of just walking, a little bit relaxed. And then we got to a house that offered us coffee and tea in the midst of all of this. Very warm, communal. Got to see other people from the community and other solidarity activists. And then my buddy was actually going towards where other Palestinians were going. So to make sure she was safe, I was the buddy, so I went along with her. So we were at the foot of where the Israeli army was on a roof, and they were shooting tear gas at us again, live rounds. I was behind a car. There's other Palestinians too, because there were still live rounds. And we saw them coming down from the roof, and some of them were getting into the truck. So that's where our focus was. And then we saw Palestinians from our left running towards us and behind us through the olive grove. So in any case, we see Palestinian run, we run too. So we ran through the olive groves. It was in a downward slope, and I made sure my comrade was safe in front of me. And right when I was about to step down in the embankment, that's when I was shot. I didn't know I was shot. I thought it was a tear gas canister, because it felt like a blunt object hit me really hard. And I was still trying to run away because I didn't know I was shot. And a comrade of mine from the group, anti-Zionist person from Israel, 48, actually came back and helped me limp away. And then finally we got into the clearing and the Palestinians lifted me up. And that's when I saw that there was blood on the pants I was wearing and that I was probably shot. And then they brought me to a pickup truck. And from there, they brought me to the emergency clinic in Beta, which, they transferred me into an ambulance. And from the ambulance, we were heading to Faz3a Hospital in Nablus. And they stopped us 3 times. There was 2 army trucks that actually stopped us initially. I don't know how we got around. And then there was 2 checkpoints where they demanded to see who was inside. And at that point, after those 2 checkpoints, we finally got to Faz3a Hospital. So we got there at 1, I got shot at 2, and finally got to the hospital at 3. So all that happened within a 2-hour span. I was in the hospital for maybe 2 days, 2.5 days, where I heard the news of the school getting bombed. I saw, and I heard, and I actually visited a child that was shot. He was 12 years old, playing soccer. I wished him well. He wished me well, and his family was just, thanking God, alhamdulillah, that he was all right, and that their prayers were actually for the people of Gaza. So there's a deep connection between Palestinians, even if they're in the West Bank, and those in Gaza as well. Even when their son was shot in both legs just for playing soccer. And also when I was in there, there was 4 other young boys that were shot, 3 in the leg, 1 in the shoulder. So it's something that just happens on a daily for Palestinians. And I feel like, so the reason why I was also smiling, people say I wasn't shot because I was smiling. I was smiling because I knew that, I was able to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. It was an honor. But also to let folks know back home that I was probably okay. I was never shot before, so I don't actually know how I felt until that moment. And after that, they were they did surgery on me. They did a few scans, and the whole hospital just came to show, their appreciation and love, wishing me well. I don't think I slept fully that first night because so many Palestinians really want to show how much they appreciated the solidarity, that, someone from, abroad came to be with them, to stand in solidarity, to provide protective presence. And after that, Oh, so when I was in the hospital, I also heard of the Israeli army coming into the town, which probably was the same feeling that folks felt back home when they heard I was shot. Um, and when I got back, there was a settler that was killed, and all the settlements around us actually called for an attack on Kusra, which thankfully didn't happen that day. Um, but it's a daily occurrence for Palestinians. Before international activists came, they said that settlers and the Israeli army would come every day, harassing them in the streets. Um, when we got there, they said it stopped a little bit, and it comes in waves because now they know that there are other people that are documenting their crimes, and they can't just get away with it. Um, and the other international activists that I was with, they were with farmers, they were with shepherds, and also whenever the Israeli army came into town or settlers, they would go down and document and record what was happening. And the one thing that was my favorite moment was actually going to the playground they called the garden. They said that they didn't have it open until international activists came. So just to see the children playing and laughing as a teacher, um, it meant a lot to know that they were able to experience that joy um, because of our presence. And it was one time, but that will stick with me forever. I was on crutches and dancing to Dami Falastini with the children. Um, and they all just gave us flowers. It was an unforgettable time, a moment. So what I was left to do, um, while everyone else was shepherding, um, documenting and recording, I was keeping watch. We're on a hill and we're able to see some settlements around us and kind of let folks know, if we see the IOF or um, the settlers come. So that was my job. I did also a first aid training there, made some connections, and it even had my name over there, Amado Sison. Um, but yeah, if you have any interest, even if you think financially you're not able to, or maybe time-wise right now you can't, I would say just reach out to Faz3a or any other group. Um, just learn the information to bear witness to the apartheid. It's a lot different than seeing it on our feeds. To feel the presence or to feel the love and the warmth that the Palestinians have for each other, for their land, and for people that show up in solidarity. There's nothing like that. And Faz3a does help if you're unable to, as much as we can, because we know that Palestinians, are calling for and want people to come, to bear witness and also to just be in community with them. And yeah, I did want to leave more room for questions. I'm better with directed questions than just free form, and also for Mahmoud to speak.
Yeah.
But outside of that, yeah, if you're not following Faz3a, please do reach out to them. And if you cannot, there's also an initiative called Pal Shield, look that up. It's to try to help provide defense for the community that we were in. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Daniel. That's really powerful. Again, before we move on to the next speaker, we do have a Q&A that y'all can submit questions to. We won't be able to get all of them, so we're gonna try and get to as many as we can. But our next speaker is Mahmoud, who is a Palestinian academic, a farmer in the West Bank, as well as another activist with Faz3a. So Mahmoud, please tell us more about yourself and your background, your experiences out there.
Thank you very much for organizing this very important webinar in order to explore more about Faz3a and what is needed to be done in order to bring change and to end this that is happening in Palestine. My name is Mahmoud. I am living in a village to the south of Bethlehem, and I am one of the co-founders of the Popular Struggle Coordination Committee, and one of the founders of Faz3a and organizers of Faz3a since 2019, when we started Faz3a as local groups with internationals who were joining us. But as well as I am a shepherd, indigenous Palestinian, and working on the land for my entire life, despite the fact that I have some academic background. So I thank you, Danielle, thank you, Kathy, thank you, everyone, for raising what is happening and how is the situation in Palestine. But imagine the psychology behind all of that on the Palestinians when you live it on daily basis. And I reached my fifth decade, and I never felt the freedom. I never lived the freedom. I was born, grown up under occupation. And when you see the differences over these 5 decades, you can see and you can understand the Israeli project in Palestine, whether in 48 or in 67. And now we can understand where is the Israeli project is going beyond historical Palestine, to Lebanon, to Syria, to Iraq, to Egypt, everywhere. And I don't know if there will be a country on another galaxy that Israel is trying to invade and to occupy. They will not hesitate to do it. And imagine all of this complicity on the mentality of the people. And talking to you, an activist who spent 20 years of his life on daily basis confronting Israeli soldiers and settlers, never feared, never like it's my game to mock them, to play, to you know, like how they are as soldiers and settlers. But after October 7th, we saw the fear, and we feel the fear that reaches the bones of the people. And I am talking from my personal experience when I saw the first day after October 7th, what they did when they start mapping activists. When they start to map activists, personally, when they came in front of my home, the settlers, that they know me personally, that we have like this personal confrontation in the past 20 years, and some of them, the one that you saw, and some of them are on the American sanction list, like Jacob from the north of the West Bank and others. And you see that now there is no law. When you feel like you are uncitizen and you are a defenseless person, you cannot defend yourself. And the army is there just to make sure that you as Palestinians will not react to the settler violence. So the image is that settlers are coming, the guns of the soldiers are towards you. If you raise your head, if you raise your hand, even if you throw a stone, you will be shot and dead, because They are there to make sure that the citizens, between brackets means the settlers, are protected from the uncitizens, which are the Palestinians who are there. So that's the image. You are not a citizen. There is no laws. Settlers can do whatever they want, and the army is there just to protect the settlers from what they are doing. Now, imagine this situation immediately after October 7th, where the volunteers of Faz3a are stationed in Kosra. 6 Palestinians were shot by settlers. 6, 4 youth, 5 youth, and 1 man. And the man was shot because he was involved in the nonviolent resistance before. And he was one of the people who were defending the village of Kosra. So the settlers have their plan, and it is not separated from the state land, from the state plan. So if what the Palmach and the Haganah and all the militia of the Zionist movement were doing back before 1948 against the Palestinians were backed by the British Empire, now they are backed by a Zionist state, that the settlers are on the front line attackers of the Palestinians. So the army is busy in Gaza, the army is busy in Lebanon and in Syria and other places, while more than 300 armed settlers by American guns are ready to do the job in the West Bank, which is to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from the West Bank and to push them to Jordan as a temporary location for the Palestinians until Israel achieve its greater Israel from Iraq to Egypt. So that is very clear. So the 7th of October make this over to everyone. No one is talking about two-state solution. No one is talking about all what has been prepared for the Palestinian people. And who are the first to pay the price for this are farmers. Why farmers? Because the farmers are the productive people and the first decolonized people who are able to eat from their axe digging, and that challenges the colonial project of the Israeli state in a way that we have to create dependency of the Palestinians. So they cannot eat from what they produce. They eat from the settlements products when they work in the settlements products. So that's why we see that the farmers are the first target for the settlers, not only from the 7th of October, but before. Because there are 3 important transformation points that happens in the last decade. The first, when Trump became the president of the US. And second, when the extreme fascist government established early 2023. And finally, on the October 7th. And the fourth transformation point is re-electing Trump as the president of the Americans, in which he will sign on the annexation of the West Bank, and there will be no more talking about the West Bank, because the final result that Israel is dreaming from all these war zones is to annex the West Bank. So that's the fear. That's where Faz3a is the cornerstone in inhibiting this Trump Netanyahu project. So we need to think about how the farmers over years, the space shrinked. Shepherds are unable to graze their sheep. Farmers are unable to reach their farms. The farmer that you saw near Yitzhar settlement, so the north of the West Bank, this year a mountain of olives was unpicked because of the settler attacks and because of the militia of the settlers who are armed that are attacking the Palestinian farmers. So, and that with the attacks that we are talking about, if you are, as a settler, burning a mountain of olives, you are a hero in Israel. But if you throw your cigarette out of the window of your car in Israel, you will be jailed. So imagine the contradiction. Imagine how Israel is in contradict with itself. Environment is environment, whether in West Bank or everywhere. So if you burn a mountain full of olives and the youngest olive tree is older than the age of the state of Israel, you are a hero. If you burn a family, you are a hero, as happened in Doma, a village next to Kosra, which is the place where the volunteers were hosted. So, and why Faz3a? Why Faz3a? Because over history, we discover, and from our experience, that the constant and continuous resistance is the sumud, the everyday resistance of the Palestinians. There are other means of resistance that coexisted with the everyday resistance, but it waves. The only thing that enabled Palestinians to overcome the Israeli repression and aggression is the sumud. And Faz3a is watering this sumud of the Palestinians. The first thing the Palestinian farmers will tell you, do not leave us alone. We want you to be with us as internationals. And that is fostering the sumud of the people. And as Daniel was saying, we were hospitalized, we were welcomed. And that is the relationship, the mutual relationship between internationals and Palestinians. This provokes the Israeli army and the settlers. They don't want to see Palestinians with internationals and so on. The first message that they send to the locals in the villages where Faz3a volunteers are is, don't bring internationals with you. As if they go by themselves, they will let them pick their olives. No, they will not allow them to pick their olives, but they want them to accept the permission of the settlers and the army that allow them when they want, as happened in many villages when they built the segregation wall and they put gates and they let the people at the beginning and then finished. You are not allowed, and after 3 years they convert the private land into a state land that will be given to the JNF, that will be given to the JNF, who is complicit in the genocide that is happening in Palestine. So this is a message, and a new message, that you have to campaign against the JNF. The JNF is a colonial tool in the hands of the Israeli project in order to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from their land. So now the debate is becoming, we want internationals in Palestine or outside Palestine. Let me bring this debate to our webinar. Some who came out after the war, especially youth, who started the encampments in the universities and did what they did, and they discovered the reality. Those self-educated youth that are able to educate themselves, to know the reality, and to understand the policies of their states, when they try to convince them that the sun rises from the west, not from the east, they reject this narrative. And they said, we want to educate ourselves. We do not rely on the mainstream media. We do not rely on what the state is selling us from lies and lies over decades and decades. So the hope is coming from there. And we saw how much in the United States, how much the repression, those youth, self-educated, awareness students faced from the state. They arrested them by hundreds and they tried to evict them from the campuses of the universities. This phenomenon is a change, and the states and the power holders in the West are shaking from the youth movements in the West, because they know, because it's easy to discover the lies of the states, because it's easy to see how much the states in the West are not respecting the minds of their citizens when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli issue. when they debate about facts that we are living. So how we will believe them about what happened in the past if we are living now and live on the cameras and they are rejecting it? So how we want to believe the states? So that's the way the youth in the West try to challenge the mainstream media and narratives that are coming from top by self-educating themselves about the other ways of education, and that brings an impact. Sadly, the people in the West are looking for safe spaces where they can express themselves, where they can have freedom of expression. And many of Faz3a volunteers and ISM volunteers found Palestine as the safest space for them for freedom of expression, not only activism, but also freedom of expression. So if you do not feel like safe to express and you will face challenges like anti-Semitic and blah blah, you find the safe space for your freedom of expression in Palestine. Daniel was shot and he recovered. So physical violence can last for a short period, a month, two, three, four. But the shot of manipulation and mind pollution will last for centuries. That's why the debate now is that change must come from Palestine and internationals must come to Palestine. And I am telling you that most of the volunteers want to stay even over visa because they see the impact that they are doing. When you are challenging as an American accent soldier in front of you, when you are challenging a European soldier, when you are challenging all of the people there want to stay in Palestine, to stand beside the Palestinians, and they do not want to leave them alone. So there are a need for international presence in Palestine. Your camera is a weapon. Your presence is a weapon. And sorry to say this, your skin color is a weapon. Your passport, these papers, is a weapon. And we want to use them. And these privileges internationals have under this capitalistic world, we need to use them to support and stand beside the people who are living under colonialism. And that's very important. Therefore, collecting the evidences from the farmers and from the volunteers, we found that there is a difference when there are internationals and when there are no internationals. Therefore, your presence is crucial. And what we want from this, we want this campaign to continue, despite the fact it's a big challenge for us how to take care of all of these things. Sometimes internationals feel lost where to go, how to do, and all of that. But we want to continue with this campaign and we urge internationals to come back. But some recommendations for internationals who are working from their home countries. Please be the messengers of the Palestinians back home. Secondly, do not disconnect your activism from your environment. So activism in a closed halls or in closed webinars, and then we go out forgetting everything. That's very dangerous. So keep the kufiya on your shoulders. Keep the Palestinian flag on your as a badge on your clothes, on your bags, whatever. This will give a sign to the people around you. That is a way of changing this. Discuss that with your children, with your families, with your colleagues at work. There you will create an environment of solidarity. But if we keep solidarity only in a march, only in a webinar, only on a closed hall, this will not have an impact on the ground. And now is needed more than any time before. Trump is back on power in the US. Trump is a very dangerous guy, the same as Kamala Harris. It's not that there is no difference, but this guy will do it in a very open way. in a very harsh way. So he will be imposing solutions on the Palestinians. There will be annexation of the West Bank. And we want to resist and continue resisting this. And we do not want to underestimate what we are doing. There are different pockets of resistance all over the world. Our duty is how to link these pockets of resistance together, to see an international campaign with all its resources and powers in order to change and to bring change to the Palestinians. That will be something will happen. We see things are changing slowly, and we know how much it is challenging to to challenge the Israeli policies and the American policies in the Middle East. But we are there. As far as there is an olive tree, as far as there is a Palestinian farmer looking at his olive tree, there will be resistance and there will be Palestinians. I am optimistic and there is hope. The hope is coming from the light of the olive oil that we harvest few days ago. And this olive oil will light the darkness of that is in the Middle East and in Palestine. We know that the future is for the oppressed people. We know that Israel, what they are doing is illegal. Illegal according to the law of America and Europe that they established. And this leads to the statement that freeing Palestine is freeing the world. Comrades, we want to continue. We are proud of you. And what you are doing is making a difference. I am telling you from my own experience in the last 20 years, you are great comrades that we need you and we want you to stay in Palestine. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Mahmoud. That was so powerful. I'm gonna move on to the Q&A because we have so many questions and I want to be able to get out through them. Um, but actually seeing a lot of questions. So I'm gonna have to get to this. People are basically asking about like when you're going there, the visa process, getting through Ben Gurion Airport, dealing with the IDF. You know, if you get denied entry, does that affect your passport? Like, if you could give us a bit more about both your experiences going in and out of Palestine, and you know what is that process like? What can people expect if they decide to take part in this?
I didn't go through Ben Gurion or 48, right? I went through Jordan, so that's another way. The visa was online. This is before there's now a task force for international volunteers by Israel creating one to target international volunteers. So I don't know how that's affected folks, but it was just an online little thing where I signed up and they accepted it. Going in and out, going in, I was a Filipino religious traveler. I had, a Bible on my backpack, I had a rosary, stuff like that. So, had a packet of different religious places I want to visit, which was true. But my primary was, to be in solidarity with Palestine. And I showed it to them. They asked me 2 questions and I got in. So I think, that process is covered in the training. So I think a lot of the questions about visa, about going in, a lot of that can be answered when you do orientation and doing the training. And even in the chat, there's a lot of people that have different experiences and more recent experiences that can be kind of answered in that chat. Coming out though, I did get my passport. They took a picture of my passport, paper passport, a copy, and I was held for an hour at the border. but nothing happened after that, thankfully. I heard them say Mossad. I heard them, you have to wait. And it was 30 minutes after the border actually closed. So it was a little scary. But thankfully, I think calm and normal. They're just like, oh, you can go now. And I'm like, good, this is great. All right, peace. So yeah, it's different experiences for everyone. I think prepping, for going in as well as leaving is a big thing, which is covered in the trainings in more specificity. But yeah, at least that one, I would just say, if you have any interest, just contact ISM, contact Faz3a, contact any other group. And at least with Faz3a and ISM, we do have those trainings, and a lot of that is covered, even in just orientation. So
I just want to say something regarding this. Very few. Just we do not want to exaggerate the things of coming in and out. Israel is a stupid country, by the way. They don't think that they are so smart and they can do whatever. Still, they are like the one who swallow the knife. If they want to kick internationals and they to investigate everyone who's coming, then they will lose. And if they let them in, they will come in. But uh, very simple things, because they are also investigating this, and there is an article came out from the settlers about how internationals are lying and so on to come in. So I think most of the tactics to be used should be discussed in closed doors, so that uh, they do not know these tactics and they start to implement them. But one thing, most of the flights are canceled to Tel Aviv, so most of the volunteers are coming via Jordan, and that's easier. More expensive, but is easier to come via Jordan. But yeah, as I said, don't think that Israel knows everything. They can Google you the most they can do. That's what they can do.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm gonna just take a couple more questions. Madeline asked, actually, Mahmoud, you touched on this, but you made some really amazing points. So I'd love to hear more from you as well as Daniel about this. But they're wondering, how can we make as big of an impact doing work, if doing work is about showing solidarity and amplifying the stories of Palestinians, we can't do as much to stop the violence while there. So how is it that we can make as much of a big impact going there as we could here? I guess they want to know more about, like, especially if there's, the risk of being injured and whatnot. How should people think about this?
Daniel, you want to go for it, or just I can say something very little about this? And this is what I'm investigating now. What can be done? Why we are marching with hundreds of thousands of people in the capitals of the world, with millions of people, and we are not able to penetrate the walls of the governments and the decision makers. So but we need to transform the action of solidarity into something to a higher level, so that we can see the change on the policies of the states wherever. So that's something, that's why I meant when we want to connect the buckets of resistance all over the world, the campaigns that is happening, to see that there is a difference between Spain and France. Spain is not allowing the ships or to dock in Spain that have weapons going to Israel. The UK is not issuing new licenses to send weapons to Israel. But these are still classical activism and solidarity from us. How we are going to lift our solidarity in order to transform the actions into solidarity, into something touchable and tangible change that people can see. This is our next phase of solidarity, in a way that how we are going to reach the decision makers in a way that we will force them to take decisions because we know that there is a shift in the public, but we didn't see any shift in the state level. So that's where we have to think in the future about our activism. This is my opinion that I'm still investigating. I'm doing research about this point with some activists about what can be done, and any inputs also we can put it together to see what can be done. Thank you.
And yeah, I saw that question. There is a real risk of being hurt, right? I was shot. 3 weeks later, at the same demonstration, Aishnur was murdered, right? She was even trying to be away from everything that was happening. And Palestinians are killed every day, right? In Beta, it was 17 Palestinians killed since October 7th. But yeah, and I think I'm still trying to go back next year. So even with that possibility of harm and violence, you know, if you are able and willing, there are people that have gone through more weeks than I was there, and they didn't get hurt, but they were able to see and bear witness and stand with Palestinians. And I think it's an honor to be able to stand with them and be in solidarity. And I think if you are able to, that's the number one thing to do. And just interested, if you have interest, just do the orientation and see. But here, I think today there's actually an action at one of the ports, or trying to have them stop moving Zim, which is moving weapons. There's stolen land sales that are happening all across the US that people are showing up to and protesting. And we've seen the disregard of our government in, supporting Palestinians, giving impunity to Israel for all the atrocities that we see and they lie about. And even legislatively, right? We have some bills and we can try to push them. But definitely, I think getting a group of folks that support Palestine and brainstorming together and seeing the conditions that are contributing to the oppression of Palestinians where you're at and doing direct action, I think those are where the new ideas and the new places of how to showcase solidarity in a real way in our local communities. And yeah, we're all figuring out how to, pressure our officials to, do an arms embargo, to stop supporting, the apartheid state. And, I think wherever you're at starts with just getting those people together, or being in organization with one another, and finding out what the best avenues of pressure and direct action are where you're at.
All right, thanks so much. Yeah, I just have one more question. Uh, Basically, a lot of the Kate is answering some of the questions under the Q&A, typing them out, so please check that out. But maybe this is more aimed at Daniel, but Mahmoud, if you have any thoughts, please do share. As an American citizen or an American who was shot, did you have what was did you end up speaking to any government officials, like the embassy or representatives? And, was there any reaction or interaction with US officials or local officials regarding your story?
No. So embassy reached out to me. I filed a report. I didn't want to go to military base to submit it. So they submitted it for me, and I'm still waiting for a response. They sent it to the government and still waiting a response.
When I got here, the only person was Cory Booker, who had interest in meeting with me, but I told him I don't want to meet with you until you meet with the group, Americans for Justice in Palestine, because I don't want him to have an empty, I'm so sorry, we were trying to reach you. I want it to be an actual constructive conversation where, you know, people from Palestine are, you know, given voice to. Still waiting on that. We have a few other officials that we're trying to pressure. They're sympathetic, but not to the fullest extent of like arms embargo. But yeah, no, especially not from the State Department. They just put out something where it was like, we advise Americans against going, and I'm like, because it's dangerous, but like, who's causing that danger, right? But they never address it. It was just an interest to talk by Cory Booker, and we got the embassy to file a report. That's it. And if they did bring it up, I feel like in beta, in the demonstrations, you know, it may have led to, you know, Aishinor still being here, you know, if there was any attention. And it, you know, that lack of, you know, highlighting, you know, an American getting shot, probably led to that escalation where they thought with the impunity that they have, they could shoot an American, and now she's not with us, right? And she lives on in our memories of solidarity and our actions. So, yeah.
Mahmoud, I'm curious if you know of any any other situations and your experience with that. What have people dealt with?
Let me just comment on this issue of harassing internationals and following them. From all the data we collected over the last 10 years, we found only one case in which the Israelis put sanction on a settler because they severely injured an American CPT volunteer back in 2004 or 5 in Faz3a in the south of the West Bank. More or less, the embassies and consulates will blame the victim, will blame the volunteers. So they will not stand beside the volunteers. Simply because if you follow the security and the red zones issue that the states are exchanging, you will see that West Bank, Gaza, Jerusalem, all are red zones. So they will let the volunteer carry the responsibility. You have to check the, I don't know, the FCDO or whatever website so that you cannot come to this country. And then if there will be a court case, there will be no results. So in a way or another, there will be no difference at the end if there will be a legal process or not. But politically speaking, this will impact. If this will repeated what has happened to Aishan, the same as what happened with the flotilla back in 2011-12, when they killed 12 Turkish people, it didn't affect the presence of internationals in Palestine. On the contrary, it encouraged more internationals to come, and that's very important. And Israel is taking that into consideration. Israel want to use the French expression when they warm the water degree by degree on the frog. And that is how they are dealing. They don't want to harass internationals collectively. We organized a campaign back in 2011, Welcome to Palestine. So the same as settlers are able to come and push the door of the airport in Washington, internationals can come to Palestine and say we are coming to Palestine. The influence of Israel on the international governments that they blocked internationals from leaving their home. So they blocked them at the airports of Paris, Geneva, wherever in Europe, and they didn't let them come. And that reflects how they have power. But if we follow until the end, there will be a victory for the volunteers, for the activists. What Israel is trying to do is to isolate activists individually, to attack them individually, to harass them so that they will give up. But The results on the ground is contradicting that. Many internationals want to come. It's true that there are many organizations like APPI, CPT, and others who withdraw a little bit from the risk areas. But on the other side, youth are coming. I think it's the first time we have ISM volunteers and Faz3a volunteers with this number, despite the risk that they know that they will have, and despite the fact that their governments will let them for the Israeli soldiers.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm actually gonna pin Kate too and ask all three of you how can folks get in touch with you or get in touch with your projects? Please let us know verbally as well as like drop any links in the chat to everyone.
The Faz3a campaign, you mean? There is, first of all, for volunteers to come, they have the defendpalestine.org. There, we will guide them, we'll take them to the safe place, and we will contact them, and we will be we will be with them. Defend Palestine. I think the guys dropped it in the chat, and they know about it.
Yeah, it could be just the Defend Palestine, or if you're comfortable, also how to contact you as individuals. Daniel?
Yes, I mean, if mine is, you have my Signal, WhatsApp, and you can share whatever you want, and I'm more than happy to continue.
Yeah, and for me, I'll drop it in the chat. I can give you my personal Instagram, but just message me. I don't add people that I don't really know, but if I know that you're from here and you're having questions, I will. Because for me, I think the biggest thing for me is that excites me is when people see me, but then they say that they want to volunteer. And I definitely give precedence to folks that really want to volunteer and or even just interested and have questions. So I'll just drop that in the chat. It's think of mindfuck, but higher level. So mental intercourse. That's my Instagram. And I'll also put my email too.
And I put my email in the chat, and you can always contact Faz3a through the website, which I think Mahmoud posted previously, or Alicia did. Which, if you're not in the US, is the best way to do that, because there are support groups in a number of countries. And so if there's a support group in your country, then you'll be connected with them, which is great, because then, that really enables you to continue the work when you get back, and or before you go, to help support the others who are going. If there isn't a support group already in your country, maybe you'll want to start one. And we're certainly happy, our US group is certainly happy to help other groups, people in other countries, figure out how to sort of kick it off.
All right, thank you so much to all three of you, not just for your time today, but like your work and your sacrifices, especially here. I'm like just in awe of all of you. For those of you who are in DSA or would like to join DSA, we have a Chevron campaign that we're doing right now, Stop Fueling Genocide, that you can sign up for with the link that I just sent. You can also join the international committee. Once you join DSA with the link that I just sent, I believe our international committee is dsaic.org/join. But yeah, and we also will have this posted on our YouTube channel, which is DSA International Committee. We have a lot of other great posts, panels, and webinars on there as well. Thank you so much to everyone who came out, and have a great day, everyone. Free Palestine.